For more on the president's push to sell his plan for a military strike in Congress, our guest is Politico White House correspondent Reid Epstein. Reid, always good to see you. Let's start with the vote of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. A day or so ago, it did pass 10-7. There was one member of the committee that just voted present, which essentially didn't really cast a vote. That was Ed Markey, Democrat from Massachusetts. What do you make of his vote of present?
Well, for Ed Markey, it was his first high-profile vote as a member of the Senate. He was elected in a special election to replace John Kerry, who's now the Secretary of State. And Markey really took a pass on the vote, and he took a lot of criticism over the last day or so for basically punting on the vote. He told our colleagues at the Boston Globe that he plans to vote up or down when it comes, yes or no, when it comes to the floor for a full vote. But he said he wasn't prepared to vote in committee, despite having sat through some 4 hours of hearings with Secretary Kerry, as well as the meetings and conference calls with members of the President Obama administration.
You know, another interesting development during the debates and the vote from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is that Senator Rand Paul introduced an amendment that said that if the president went against the wishes of Congress, that would be considered a violation of the Constitution. There was another amendment as well that was proposed that was just straight out voted down. This amendment was tabled. What do you make of that? It could have just been voted up or down.
Well, basically, the other members of the committee didn't want to take a position on Rand Paul's amendment. It was, Rand Paul, as you know, is perhaps the most libertarian member of the Senate, and is an isolationist essentially on foreign policy, and is trying to almost embarrass some of his colleagues in the White House as well, and by proposing an amendment like this, and it was tabled, so the rest of them didn't have to take a formal position on it.
Right. Now, of course, you don't know a head count on the House, but the president really does have a tough row to hoe. It is Republican dominated. However, many members of the Democratic Party are against war. How is he going to make this sell in the House?
It's a tricky spot. The president and his team are pitching to Democratic members of the House almost as we speak, to support a resolution to use force on Syria. Nancy Pelosi, the House Minority Leader, is working her colleagues, her Democratic colleagues, to get them on board. But it's not easy. Members of Congress tend to respond to calls and letters to their offices, and generally people aren't going to call their office and say, yes, we should go to war in Syria, or we should attack Syria. And so calls are numbers of hundreds and hundreds against, with very few calls to particular districts backing the president's proposal.
Indeed, and I understand that the president plans to address the American public on Friday, tomorrow, to make his pitch to American citizens. What does he have to say to move this seemingly very obstinate opinion poll against any kind of military intervention?
Well, he hasn't said he'll speak on Friday. What his team said today, told reporters traveling with him in Russia, was that they're considering making some kind of an address after he returns from Russia on Friday.
Got it.
But you're right, is that it's difficult. At this point, the public opinion is against him, and there's been suggestions from other members of Congress, and as well as from the president's team, that it will take a presidential address to help move support in his favor. Although by the time he returns from this trip to the G20, this will have been percolating for a week, and a lot of people will have by then had the chance to make an opinion on it. And we've seen many members of Congress who have come out already, far more of them against Syrian intervention than for.
Of course, both houses of the Congress, both chambers, come back to session on Monday. Do you expect votes that soon?
We expect the Senate vote has been scheduled for Monday. There'll be a cloture vote on Monday anyway. It'll need 60 votes on cloture on Monday to avoid a filibuster. Senator Rand Paul, as you mentioned before, is one who's been publicly stewing over the idea of trying to hold up a vote by filibustering. If the Senate can get 60 votes to stop him, then it will. The House has not, at this point, put anything on their schedule. The House Foreign Relations Committee had a hearing yesterday. They haven't yet had a vote, which that committee vote would need to happen before the full House were to vote on this.
Reid, very, very quickly, of course, the president campaigned on getting America out of Middle Eastern wars. If he does get the congressional support, we go ahead with this military strike. Will this be seen as a waffle or a flip-flop on his part?
Not necessarily. If you look back to the beginning of the president's national political career, he said he wasn't against all wars, only against dumb wars. Clearly, he wouldn't classify Syria as a dumb war since he's pushing for it. And in his Nobel Peace Prize speech in 2009, many senior members of the administration have pointed out, he talked about the justification for war. And clearly, he feels that action on Syria is justified at this point.
All right, Reid Epstein, thank you so much.
Thank you.